Good morning and good evening, everyone. Welcome in Salesforce Apex Hour. And today we are going to talk about the Marketing Cloud. And our speaker is Mary. So let me hand over to her. Mary.
All right. Thanks. Thanks for that, Amit. Let me make sure I present correctly first. All right. So thank you everyone for joining this session and for taking your time. I will be walking you through Marketing Cloud development and how to get started with it. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Merari, and I'm a senior technical consultant at Salesforce. I've been with the company for over 2 years now. And prior to that, I was with a partner, and I was a Sales Cloud and Marketing Cloud consultant as well. All right, so enough about me. The agenda for today, I had a forward-looking statement here. However, I will be walking you through existing components that we have. Sorry. And I don't think it's necessary, but just keep in mind to base your purchasing decision on existing products that we offer. Right. Our agenda is I'll introduce a little bit about Marketing Cloud, but not too much about it. I'm expecting that some of you have already gone through trails or have read about Marketing Cloud already. So I'm expecting that there's already a base understanding of what Marketing Cloud does. I will be guiding you through on a high level what the development process looks like. And I will introduce a use case, which is the most common use case that we all go through for every account that we have. And I'll do a live demonstration of that and how to develop that. I'll also be sharing with you some cool resources that I've stumbled onto over the past few years while looking for some resources for Marketing Cloud. Right. So let's get started. What is Marketing Cloud? So Marketing Cloud is a bunch of builders and studios that help you send multiple messages across multiple channels, such as email, SMS, Ad Studio, and push. You'll be hearing a lot about Automation Studio and Journey Builder. These are the core components of Marketing Cloud that help marketers automate their campaigns. We also have tracking and reporting to provide analytics so that we can improve how campaigns are set up and we understand what the return or what the value of those campaigns are for the company. And it also has API and SFTP enabled integration so that since Marketing Cloud is not supposed to be used as the source of truth, we need to be able to integrate to other platforms, other external data systems that pass on that source of truth onto Marketing Cloud, and then we pass back analytics to the external data sources. So that's a very integral component of Marketing Cloud. Right. So how do you get started when you're going to build a campaign or a journey? So this is a very typical development process. So first and foremost is to integrate the external data onto Marketing Cloud. So as you can see here, the first step is to send that data. And the most common use case is to send it as a bunch of files and put that onto the FTP account. So Marketing Cloud has its own FTP account. However, you can also set up external FTP account so Marketing Cloud can pick up off of those. And then once you send that file to the FTP account, you can have an automation that would listen to that specific FTP account folder and pick up those files and insert them into a data extension. A data extension is basically just a table, and the data extension is the interface of it. So it's gonna have columns or fields and attributes and records. So it's just a very typical interface of a table. And then in the automation, you can further filter your contacts or your target audience and inject them into a journey. So you may use a journey, you may use an automation. The difference for both, or like the rule of thumb we usually have, is if there's a decision split, or rather if there's a decision or there's a second communication after the first one, that's usually, we're usually going to build it onto a journey. However, if it's just a one-off communication, then we build it off using Automation Studio. So after injecting them or having them go through a journey that's going to be received by the end users, after receiving by the end users, some of the metrics would flow back onto Marketing Cloud, and that can flow back through system data views that you can access and extract and then return back to the external data system. So this is a very high level overview of how you're going to run or set up a campaign or a journey or a program. Okay. Up next. All right. So let's go through a use case so that it would make more sense. Okay. So welcome journey is one of the most common use cases that we have or we had to set up on a client's account. Reason for that is it's the first time when a person signs up, it's an opportunity for a company to make a strong impression to their customers, and they had to make sure that they send that communication at the right time, not too late and like not too soon. All right, so how do we set up this welcome journey? Now let's go to a live demonstration of that. Okay, so I've already logged into my Marketing Cloud account. This account is a learning account, so it's just purely used by me. And this is an Enterprise 2.0 account. So we have a different types of account, and but the old version was a 1.0. Any new versions or any new purchases rather would be provisioned under 2.0. Right. So first thing that I will check is the FTP account. So that's under setup. And I'm an admin of my own account, so I have access to the setup page. So if you look at it, it's very similar to the setup configuration page on Sales Cloud. Right. So under data management, you can see FTP accounts. So my FTP account has already been configured. So I'm all set with that. Next is that I'm going to make sure that I have the file location created. Right. So under file locations, I've already pre-created audience. So as you can see here, it's under import and then audience. I can also access my FTP account through like FileZilla or some other application. So I have here Cyberduck. So if I get out of this folder, as you can see, this is the import folder that I have. Under that, there's audience. And so basically, I just follow that file path, and that's what I configured under file location, right? So once I'm sure that I already have that, I'm gonna go to create my data extension, my table. So I'm going to Email Studio and email. So there's two ways that you can go to, or you can create a data extension. It's either Email Studio or through Audience Builder, Contact Builder. The reason why I always go to Email Studio is because of a whole old habit. The old platform, we were only able to create data extensions on Email Studio before. So on the later enhancement of the platform, they allowed data extensions to be created under Contact Builder. But either way, you can use either. on Email Studio or Contact Builder. So I've already pre-created the data extension that we're going to use for today. So I have here welcome journey. It's very straightforward. You have 5 attributes here: contact key, address, first name, opt-in source, and date added, which has a default value of current date. I have here CST because the like back-end date system is based on CST. So when you tick this current date, it's not going to use the account state, it's going to use the platform state, which is on CST. So that's a gotcha that you have to remember. I'm going to explain why I have these fields. So first off, why do I have a contact key? So Marketing Cloud allows you to create like 360 view of your contact. In order to do that, we need a unique identifier. To allow us to identify a specific person, and whenever we talk to this specific person on various touches, such as email, journeys, automations, and whatnot. So this contact key needs to be consistent for every contact that you have. Next up is email address. If you have a sendable data extension, which this is, you need to make sure that you only have one field that is of type email address. If you need to store different fields, if you need to store like 2 email addresses in 2 fields, make sure that the second field is of type text and not email address. Sorry, I'm going through the questions, but I'm gonna answer the questions at the end of the demo. Sorry about that. Right, going back. So yeah, just keep in mind that the best practice is to only have one email address data type on your data extension. First name and opt-in source will be used as personalization to make sure that the emails that we send through this journey is personalized and directed towards this person. And I have this date added as just for tracking purposes, or if I have to debug something, right? So I've added all those in, and you can use a data extension for various reasons. You can have it just to store a data set, like a transactional data set or a non-transactional data set, such as for sending. You can also use it purely for testing purposes only, but for our use case, this data extension will be used for sending. We had to define the contact key and tell the system that, hey, this field right here is how you can identify this contact, and this is basically what this setting is. Next stop is manage policies. Right? So you can control what other people can do with this data extension, but most importantly is the data retention policy. So as best practice, we always need to make sure that the data that resides in Marketing Cloud is clean, and we have to keep the data sanity of the platform. So as best practice, we always set the data retention policy. So for this journey, I am assuming that I don't need the records that are over a year old. And that's for individual records. So it will check at the backend system, it will check the age of every individual record and delete it one by one. I can also choose to delete all the records after a year, or all the records including the data extension after a year. Right. So you can also set a particular time for that, or also reset it if there's a data import that's going to happen. Okay, so now I have this data extension which will hold all the contacts that will be targeted for my journey. So once I'm happy with that, I had to make sure I also have set up the emails properly. So I'm going to go to content under Email Studio. There's also a different way to access Content Builder. It's either you go through Email Studio or you can also go through Content Builder. Right. The difference is that if you access it through Email Studio, you can send directly. Let me wait for this to load first. So if you access it through Email Studio, you would be able to see the send option, right? If you access it on Content Builder, you wouldn't be able to see that send option. The reason for that is, let's say, for example, you have people who will, their sole reason to access Marketing Cloud is to create assets. So you would provide them access to Content Builder, but not provide them access to Email Studio. So that's the reason why there's two ways of accessing it. I've already pre-created my assets here. The reason for that is because I don't want to go into a deep dive in how to create these assets. Otherwise, it's a whole different session on its own. There's a lot to it on what the best practices are for creating assets. Just a thing that I want to point out is that those two fields that I created on the data extension are referenced here through this personalization string. So we call this %% as personalization strings, and AMP scripting is something much more complex. However, it also utilizes %% pattern. But if it's just directly accessing a specific field onto the data extension, we typically just refer to that as personalization string. Anyway, so I've already set up my data extension. I have my FTP account and file locations. I also have my content in place. I think we're all set now to go ahead and create an automation. So let me go to Automation Studio. And pre-created an automation right here, but I will guide you through how each of these components have been created. So I have here welcome journey audience import. Now let me, so the first thing that you had to set up here is the starting source. You can delete this. So it can be scheduled or it can be a file drop. Now, since we're waiting for a file in our FTP account, then that's going to be a file drop. If you have an external FTP set up, you can't listen to that external FTP. File drop only listens to Marketing Cloud FTP locations. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. And so here you can select if your file has a file name pattern, which is always a good thing. Let me reconfigure that. And then on the right-hand side, you also had to select the particular folder it needs to listen to. So I'm pointing it to audience. So currently, the automation now listens to that particular folder and waits for that particular file name to be dropped. The first activity that you then need to drag from the left-hand side is the import file activity. Now you can see there are other activities here. I'm not going to go through each one of these for time reason. So let's just go and explore what I've done for import file activity. I've set the name and ensure that you always have the send notification email listed. It can be like a group email. That's how most of the clients have a group email for their marketing team, and that's what the mailbox will be set here for. For now, it's my own email address. This will send you a notification every time it runs, regardless of whether it failed or it completed successfully. So you have to make sure that your mailbox has some settings or filters set up. next here is I had to define the file location first. And that's the reason why I had the very first step, I had to ensure I have that audience file location. So I can select it here. And as you can see, I then set the file naming pattern. And you can see here this month, date, and year, and other date variables. Why would I need some date variables? So imagine if your welcome journey would stretch out for a year, and you need to keep on injecting new users that recently signed up to your account. Then you had to keep on sending a new file in. And in order for the automation to pick up the latest file, then you're going to have to set up a file naming pattern for that. And that's the reason why we use this, right? So you can also set different delimiters. You can also have a pipe delimiter. But let's go ahead with comma. And then you can choose to, this is like an all or nothing. So if you untick this, it's gonna fail if any rows are bad. Or if you tick this, it's just gonna skip the bad data and proceed with the rest of them. Next is you can select the data extension that where the data would reside. So you can see here there are two options, subscribers list or data extension. The subscribers list, I'm gonna talk about this a little bit later, but basically ExactTarget or Marketing Cloud has two storage for contact information. It can be stored in a list or it can be stored in data extensions. List is something that was part of ExactTarget. So most of the time we just use data extensions now whenever we develop something. So yep, let's go ahead with data extension, audience, and I've selected welcome journey, which I've pre-created before already. And then next, then you can select the data action, whether the file or the data that comes from your file would be added only, updated only, add an update, or it will completely overwrite your data extension. So I have here add an update and map by header row, right? And then I can review all that and click finish. Let's skip this one for now. So that is basically it. And now we can set this, sorry, one more thing before I forget, click on activity and make sure you set your group mailbox or your personal email address to the runtime error notification so that whenever this automation runs and when it fails, it would notify you. Right, so I've set that with my own email address. Click activate, activate now. And now you're set. So what this basically does is it just imports your data onto your data extension. So if we go back to the slide I had before, we're basically up until here in step 3. Now we're gonna go to step 4, which is to build the journey itself. Let's go to Journey Builder. And create our own journey. Now, first I'm gonna name this journey. Welcome journey. So if you look at the left-hand side, you can see multiple entry sources, some activities down below, and some cross-cloud or sales cloud activities, right? So first up is you have to start with an entry source. And with our use case, we're going to use a data extension entry source. API event is if you have an external system that would make an API call using Marketing Cloud endpoints. It would basically inject contacts into a journey through an API, or you can set up cloud pages. You can also set up Salesforce data, which means if there is an activity in Sales Cloud, such as whether a task has been created or a case has been logged with a specific criteria, that can automatically trigger and inject someone into Journey Builder. So that's what Salesforce data entry source is for. But for our use case, we're just going to use data extension. We're going to go ahead and select that data extension that we created before under audiences. So welcome, Journey. And then there's a criteria here to, or rather configuration to filter that data extension further. We don't typically use this as often. The reason being we need to ensure that the data extension only has the subset or the segmented targeted audience that we need. So, so that Journey Builder doesn't need to filter out anything anymore, and it would run faster. That's the usual reason why we don't really need this, or we don't really configure it. So after I've set up my entry data source, I'm going to set up the schedule. And what I'm going to do is, so you can choose to run this journey once. You can schedule the journey, or you can associate the journey with an automation. So if an automation is referencing the entry data extension that you have configured, Journey Builder is smart enough to identify that automation. So we're going to go ahead and select this automation, right? And there's a contact evaluation here. So since this is a triggered automation, it's basically going to evaluate all the records of the data extension itself, right? And click done. So now we're all set in configuring our entry data source and its schedule. Now let's move on to the activities. First, let me drag out a wait activity. Rather, I think I have to set this up this way, and then I can drag a wait. Yep. Okay. So a best practice is to not set a duration anything less than 1 day. And also, every before email send, we usually set a wait activity to make sure that we send it at the right time. So here, I'm just going to select 10 a.m. So after a day, a person would enter this journey, wait for the next day. At 10 a.m., it's going to proceed and send this email. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and drag another email in. So this is a drip campaign because we're basically sending one email one after the other. So I'm going to set the other way activities to extend till 10 a.m. So we found that most of our end users or customers set their email sent at 10 a.m. It's probably the time where their clients are most engaged, or high chance that their client would open up their mailbox. Right. So now I've set up all the wait activities. I'm going to go ahead and configure the email send activity. So I'm going to go to the pre-created emails that I built. Right. So this is a send classification. You can determine whether your email is a transactional email, such as notifying someone that they have to um, pay for something, or whether their purchase has been completed, order has been completed, stuff like that. Or if it's a commercial or you're just sending them promo emails. Um, Delivery options. Okay, now let's talk about publication list. So publication list is basically the master, or rather all subscribers list is the email master marketing list. And this is where all our email subscribers reside. Now we can create other publication lists, which are a subset of the all subscribers list. However, if the account has a custom way to manage their subscription, then we typically just use the all subscribers list. And that's a more common use case. They don't really use the publication list anymore and just manage it on their own. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and configure the other emails as well. Right. So it's the last one. Third touch. Right. So I'm all set with all the activities I have. Next up is I'm gonna configure the setting of the journey itself. So I'm gonna click on journey settings up top, and there's a contact entry criteria here. Now, since this is a welcome journey, that means that this contact should only go through this journey once and should not re-enter. However, whenever we build journeys, so a different use case such as like product replenishment. So if a client is a retail client and their customers have purchased a specific product, and that product is, they know that it will run out after a month, and they would want to notify that client to do like a cross-sell upsell, or make sure that they buy or purchase more to replenish. That means that if that's built through a journey, that person can re-enter the journey, because the person can purchase multiple products, stuff like that. So we can set that as a re-entry only after exiting. Re-entry anytime, I haven't, it's not a very common use case, as we want to make sure that the contact has a personalized or a one-to-one interaction inside the journey. Re-entry anytime means that the contact can exist in the journey more than once at the same time. So we want to make sure that the contact will exist in the journey one at a time, or that it can only go through it once. Next up is to set the default email address. Right. So here, Journey Builder is smart enough to understand that the only email address data type inside the entry data extension is this field right here. So it automatically selected that already without me configuring. So now that's done. Let's save it. Right. You might be wondering why there's like a little alien right here. So this is a custom activity. I have a web app that's basically integrated in Marketing Cloud, and this is a custom activity that I built. I think that's a discussion for another time, but this is just a fun side project. This doesn't come out of the box. Only these activities that I'm hovering right now are the ones that come out of the box. Please ignore this one. Right. So going back to the journey, after saving it, you need to click on validate in order to activate the last button right here, which is to test the journey. If you're wondering what this journey validation does, is it basically checks whether your data extension fields match whatever personalization strings you have in the email itself. Otherwise, it would fail. It would say that the journey cannot proceed to test, and yep, it would basically just fail. And now that I've validated and it's already validated, I can proceed and test my journey. So I can choose contacts within that data extension. And I've already entered a record in it before. So this is a pretty recent update, I think. I don't know if it was added last year or so, but we didn't have this before. So the way that we tested journeys was very different. And now it's very efficient to use this. Why would we want to test journey? If in your journey you had decision split and you want to make sure that the different data permutations go to the right branches, then this really comes in handy. The other reason is to check whether the email renders correctly. So you can specify a specific email address that is yours. So Salesforce.com, and all the emails would go through this email address, and it will not go through the email address here. So you're sure that it's not going to send to your actual users. So this is basically a summary window, and now I can click and say start test. So what this is going to do is it's going to send me all 3 emails so we can test whether those emails render correctly. And it's going to bypass the wait activities so that we don't have to wait 1 day before I can check whether the emails are correctly done. So it shows me that it's already set and it's gone through all the way, and the branches are all green, which means there's no error. So let me go ahead and check one of my mailbox. Oh, sorry. Let me, yeah, right here. Okay. So this is the first email, and as you can see, the personalization strings are rendered correctly, and yep, it looks like it went out well. Now that I'm happy with my journey, I'm gonna go ahead and activate it. Now, you might be wondering why there's a schedule and then why there's an activate. The schedule, basically, it manages how often a contact is injected in the journey. A journey can be activated all the while, but if it doesn't have the schedule configured correctly, it may not inject any other contact. So it may just be running that first batch of contacts that you had in your data extension initially, and it wouldn't take new contacts in and load new contacts in. So that's what the schedule is for. Activating it is just basically like managing the entire journey itself. If you deactivate it, it's gonna stop the journey altogether, regardless of the schedule. I'm gonna go ahead and activate that. Right. So now it's activated, and going back to the development process that I showed earlier, we're in step 4. So I've gone and created the data extensions, set up the file drop automation, created the journey, and now we're just waiting for a file to be dropped before it gets sent out. Right. So let me go ahead and check this. So before I drop a file, I just want to show you this step 2 activity. Now this step 2 activity was not created by me. It was automatically added by the platform itself. So when you associate a journey with an automation, the automation automatically gets added a step at the last, as a last step. What it basically does is that whatever new data comes in through the previous step or the step that has the entry DE, it will retrieve those information and inject it into the journey. So this is not something that we configure, so we shouldn't touch it at all. So now that's all set, I'm gonna go to the FTP account that I have, and I'm gonna drop a file. So notice that I've already adjusted the journey beforehand. That's why it already has a file. But adding this new file or retriggering it would still work. So now I'm just retriggering, and I've updated it 1042, 1042. Let's check the automation whether it ran okay. As you can see, it's now triggered the automation and it's running the first step. That means it's importing onto that data extension. That file, by the way, is this one. So it just has the same set of fields without that date field. And I just have here my sample data set. Let's see whether, okay. So now it's gone ahead and injected it into the journey. Right, let's go to welcome journey and see whether that contact, right. So as you can see, the contact has not been injected yet. So what we can do is we can view the event results. So you can see whether there are contacts being evaluated and whether there are contacts being accepted. So I can check whether that's a contact that is supposed to be entering the journey. So this contact key right here is the exact same contact key that I've set in the sample data. And the status is met criteria. There are other usage of this journey history as well. So if I select the current version for my welcome journey and remove this event, it will show me all the other activities that's going on in the journey. So currently it's just accepted that record, but it hasn't really done anything to that record. Right, so yep. So the reason for that is it's still in day 1. And so that's basically how you configure this journey. Now, after a day, obviously we're not gonna wait for that, but after a day, if you wanna check whether that email send has gone through, the way that you can do it within Journey Builder is hovering over this email send activity, and it will tell you all the metrics, whether it has been sent or not, any click activities, any sent email metrics, basically. Right, so it will tell you the performance of your email, right? The other way to do that is to go to Email Studio. So I already have it open here, and if I try and refresh, so I'm under Email Studio, and I'm under tracking sends. I think I have to refresh the whole thing in order for that journey to reflect. Right, so let me open up Journey Builder Sends. I should see welcome journey and version 1. And nothing has been queued up yet since it's still on that wait activity. So after it goes through that wait activity, we would see it on this metrics right here. So this is another way for us to track the activities within Journey Builder. Yep, that's basically all I have for you guys. It's a very straightforward and basic implementation. Thank you very much for listening, and I will go through the questions now because I've seen there was some questions, and feel free to add some more questions if you guys have any. So I'm gonna go through the chat box right now. She got to this stage through Salesforce, yes. So I'm with Salesforce, and Marketing Cloud consultants get a learning account, and this is our way to play around the platform. Unfortunately, we don't have any dev accounts that I know of. So yeah, I got through this window basically through mc.exacttarget.com, and depending on your username that you enter, it would redirect you to specific URLs. So the specific URL it directed me to is S4. That means I'm on stack 4. So similar to Sales Cloud, where you have NA, like different servers rather, basically. So Marketing Cloud also has a similar way. So it's either you're a stack. If it doesn't have anything, that means you're on stack 1. If it's you're on, I don't think we have stack 2 and 3. I haven't seen one yet. So my learning account is basically on stack 4. Right. So I am clear how she got to this point. Yeah, I'm so sorry about not talking about that, but yes, so this is basically something that internal developers get. I'm not sure whether dev accounts can be created or has been exposed or anything. Yes, it is not free. That is correct. Why is it best practice to add a day wait? Right, it's not really because I want the person to wait for a day. It's just to make sure that I'm sending this email at the specific time. So I don't want to send this email on like 7 p.m. or 12 midnight or anything like that, just to make sure that I'm sending this particular email or SMS at the right time. So that's the reason why we add wait activity before an email send or any send at all. So let's try and stop this journey. So it can also look differently like this. Let me create a new version. How do we control the time if the requirement is to send the email on the same day? Well, if it's just on the same, so a journey, sorry, let me take a step back. A journey is always running. You're basically just making sure that you inject records to it at some cadence, like daily, hourly, or weekly, right? So emails are not will not be sent at a particular specific day. You're supposed to send it at a particular specific time, and that's the reason why you have here, or what was set here is just the specific time and not the specific date. We also have wait activities for to make sure that it's going to wait until a specific date. And that's for campaigns that have specific timelines, that this specific campaign is supposed to send this email at a specific date and whatnot. Then that's the time that you're going to use wait until date. And that will allow you to control the date as well as the time. If I delete this, try to add this one. I can determine the actual date and the actual time, as well as the time zone. So yeah, since I'm not very particular of the day, I'm just making sure that I send it on a time that I'm sure that my end or the person that I'm sending this through is awake, and then that's wait by duration. Can we send a blackout on emails in journeys so they are not sent in the middle of the night? That's a good question. I'm not aware of whether there are email send blackouts for the journey, and that's the reason why we set wait by duration instead. So that's the reason why we have this best practice to always have wait by duration before any sends. So it's not really at the beginning of the journey. The beginning of the journey can be a decision split. It's just that every before email send or every before SMS send, push send, you set a particular time. So yeah, I'm not aware whether there's a journey-based blackout setting for sends. Any other questions that you guys might have? I know this is a very high-level walkthrough. Going deep dive would take us a lot more time. But I'm happy to go through any other questions if you guys have any. Is it correct that there is a blackout for SMS? That's correct. So blackout for SMS is not journey based. Rather, it is really like a mobile connect level. So you are asking very good questions. So let's go to mobile connect, and I'm gonna show you. Wait for this to load. But the thing is, right, so you can set a blackout window, and it's really at the account level. It's not specific to a journey or anything. And you're absolutely right. You can enable it and disable it, and this is going to be based on your account time zone, and your messages would be queued up and wait for the opening window, or when blackout is over, that's the only time that it's going to allow you to send that message. So it's going to queue up those messages. So with that, you wouldn't need a wait activity because SMS or Mobile Connect already has that natively. Email doesn't have it though. Another practice that we do, even though that it's not that often, is to have an update contact activity at every end of a send. And why we do that is because we usually store, it's a way for us to track where our contact is. So in the entry data extension, we would typically have a field that would identify which part of the journey a contact is, and we would let's just say, imagine that opt-in source is not opt-in source, it's like where a contact is at a specific time. So we would say like email, or rather welcome touch one sent. So yeah, there are certain practices like that, even though it's really based on the requirement of the client, whether they want that tracking mechanism or not. But yeah, that's something that we typically see on an account. Is there any other questions? If there aren't, I'm gonna go through the resources that are externally available. So when I was with a partner, I was also struggling to look for resources that can help me out. And these resources right here are the ones that saved me. So you can go through Marketing Cloud GitHub. And what you have here is we have a number of SDKs that are maintained by our product team that are readily available for integration. You can also download this Postman collection, which is very, very useful. I use this at a day-to-day basis if I need to implement something or guide a client through any API consultations. And you can also see mobile push SDKs and learning apps. So it's a pretty cool resource to look through. Of course, our Trailhead. Yeah, we didn't have this before when I was still starting. So thank God we have this Trails now. And also, I found this cookbook, which is very, very cool. And it goes through how you're like the best practices whenever you're building AmScript or SSJS on the platform. And yeah, definitely check this repository out. There's also this guy called Adam Spriggs. I don't know him personally, but his blog helped me a lot. So when I was a Sales Cloud consultant, the SOQL is not the same as the SQL in Marketing Cloud, because Marketing Cloud uses TSQL, so it's definitely very, very different. So his blog has some very neat query samples, and so this really helped me get started in my development. We also have a Marketing Cloud group. So if you are on LinkedIn, definitely I encourage you to join that. Do you have an access to this great presentation? Of course, I will send. I'm sure Amit will have access to this. So yes, I will definitely. Oh crap! Sorry, I'm showing you a feed. Go to that group. So this is maintained by. No, I'm already on a group. I'm sorry. So yeah. So Salesforce Marketing Cloud Developers Group. If you're not on it, please join that group. They also have a YouTube channel. So, and lastly, this has been built by a colleague of mine, which is based in Sydney. And if you already have access to Marketing Cloud and you're already doing development on it, please add this Chrome extension. It would allow you to look for stuff within Marketing Cloud. So it's a pretty neat tool that he has built on his free time. So thank you very much for listening, and yep, have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you so much for the great presentation and explaining the Marketing Cloud with us. And thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you so much Sri Lanka Developer Group for the joining us. And stay tuned for our next session and we'll connect again. Thank you everyone. Have a good night, good evening, based on your time zone.
Thanks everyone. Bye.